Hello everyone, and welcome to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. All the twists and turns are in today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and share before we dive in. Thank you for being here. Elçin Sangu, constantly watched not just for her roles but also for the quiet mystique of her private life, stunned the entertainment world with a raw, unguarded moment during a live online program. While speaking about the turning points in her life, she couldn't hold back. Her voice shrank to a whisper, her eyes glossed over, and then the emotion crashed over her. Viewers watched as she fought for steadiness and lost it. The words that escaped her, words she seemed to regret even as she said them, spread across social media like wildfire, a plea to stop, a confession that she wished their paths had never crossed. In an instant, timelines were flooded with speculation, and one name rose to the surface almost immediately: Barış Arduç. She had been invited as a guest on a much-followed internet show, the kind that draws out stories more intimate than any red carpet interview. Midway through, the host smiled and asked a deceptively simple question: who shaped you the most? Elçin returned the smile, but it faltered. She stared at the floor, then at the ceiling lights, searching for someplace to set the weight in her chest. After a heartbeat and then another, she spoke, her voice unsteady. Some scars, she said, never finish healing. One glance, one word, and everything breaks open again. As the sentence dissolved, so did her composure. Tears pressed forward, she tried to swallow them back. The presenter attempted to pivot, to find safer ground, but Elçin shook her head as if listening to a voice only she could hear. That's enough, she muttered, louder, almost pleading with herself as much as with the moment. If only we had never collided. People arrive like miracles and then remake your life into something you barely recognize. Her hand trembled. She slipped off her earpiece, set the microphone on the table with a soft thud that felt louder than it was, and walked out. The live feed stuttered, then cut to an apology screen while the crew scrambled. Within minutes, the internet had a new obsession. The phrase pairing Elçin Sangu with Barış Arduç quickly dominated the trending lists, even though she hadn't said his name. Their history returned to center stage, two stars whose on-screen alchemy and Karalık ask had once ignited a nationwide conversation about whether the chemistry stopped when the director called cut. They had, for years, been known not just as co-stars but as friends who shared an unspoken understanding that made even ordinary moments seem charged. Then came the whispers that something had soured. Then that it had ended. Then that maybe it hadn't, until finally, people insisted it absolutely had. Comments piled up like confessions. One follower wrote, "Who else could have moved her like that? It has to be Barış." Another added, "Everyone saw there was something deeper, no one wanted to say it out loud." Threads formed and multiplied, slicing old interviews into fragments, analyzing glances, handshakes, carefully edited clips, and candid photographs from sets and airports. A narrative emerged whether either of them wanted it or not. Then, just as speculation started to fray into chaos, Elçin posted a black and white photo to her social media, a stark image with soft edges, her eyes turned away from the camera. She kept the caption short, only a handful of words that read like a sigh on paper, and left it at that. The comments came in waves. "Stay strong, Elçin. We're with you. You're not alone." Many confessed they saw themselves in her grief. Some wrote, quietly but unmistakably, that everyone has a Barış, the person who can still change the weather inside your chest long after the storm should have passed. Silence from Barış followed, which somehow spoke louder than anything else. Insiders whispered that he had no intention of giving the moment more oxygen. There is no value in opening old doors, he was said to have confided to friends. Let what is gone remain behind. He has always had that calm steadiness, the kind that's easy to call mystery if you don't know him. When he finally did offer a few careful words during a different appearance, he kept it gentle and old-fashioned. He didn't weigh his relationships based on follows and likes. He believed timing and place gave everything their proper weight, and that words sometimes do more harm than silence. People went back to the beginning. Years ago, an ordinary introduction turned into a working partnership that turned into something else. What exactly, no one could ever agree on. What many could agree on was that off-screen laughter and shared glances carried a current that audiences felt from home. Over time, disagreements crept in, or perhaps just different dreams. The rumor mill claimed they had tried to repair what broke, briefly, only to reach for the past and find it wouldn't sit still. The tabloids gave their story a name, the love that never finds an ending, looping forward, looping back, too familiar to fully close, too bruised to truly begin again. The incident on the livestream reopened every file. Viewers replayed the moment where her smile dissolved, the catch in her breath, the way she flinched as though the studio lights had turned too bright. "Enough," she had said, in a voice so thin it nearly vanished. "It would be easier if we had never met." She left, not with a slammed door but with the quiet finality of someone stepping out of a room and taking the air with them. On social platforms, the clip ricocheted from account to account. People called it an emotional collapse. Others called it honesty. Some called it both. Debate sharpened. Was he the target of her words? She hadn't named him, and yet the puzzle pieces made a picture most people recognized. Their collaboration was too iconic to ignore. They had built something on set that audiences still revisit years later, streaming scenes like songs that never age. And in those scenes, fans insisted, there was a truth that couldn't be faked. Meanwhile, digital detectives noticed subtle changes on her accounts, a few unfollows, a quote here, a lyric there, a muted tone that people careened into meaning. The gossip pages called it a break, a renewed fracture signaled by hints only the most devoted followers would even notice. There were claims she had pulled back from certain circles, maybe to protect herself, maybe to find quiet. Those close to Barış kept their doors shut. He was focused on his work, they said. Privacy, they said. No comment, they repeated, which only fanned the speculation. When pressed, he responded with restraint, pointing out that he doesn't measure bonds through screens and that he keeps friendships where they live best, in private, where they can breathe. For days the moment replayed across the industry. People with microphones weighed in, people with memories chimed in, and people with nothing but a feeling wrote their own endings. But the footage itself said enough, a woman with a million eyes on her trying to tell the truth without telling the whole story, a leap from composure into confession, a choice to leave rather than turn her pain into a performance. In the middle of all this, fans revisited the old milestones. The first read-throughs that looked like flirtation even if they weren't. The between-take laughter people swear didn't sound like acting. The interview clips where a hand on a shoulder lingered a fraction of a second longer than it needed to. Perhaps it had been friendship. Perhaps it had been the possibility of something that most people only meet in fiction. Perhaps it had been exactly what everyone assumed, just never with a label. Whatever it was, it clearly mattered, to them, to the audience, to the story they can't seem to stop telling. As the dust tried to settle, Elçin posted again, nothing sensational, just a few lines about time and healing, about how silence can be a kindness when words feel like knives. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an attack. It read like someone telling herself to breathe. Support poured in. She was brave, they wrote. She was allowed to break. She was allowed to be complicated. Some fans apologized on behalf of the world for making myths out of people who were only ever trying to live. Industry sources suggested that after the broadcast, the show's team huddled with her off-camera. They gave her space. They offered to cut the segment, to scrub the internet if they could. But the clip had already escaped, made copies of itself, found homes in feeds and stories. Publicists weighed strategies while friends sent messages that didn't ask questions. The platform issued a mild statement about respecting boundaries and gave her the time to decide what came next. As for Barış, he continued as he always does, with a trimmed response designed to stop the bleeding rather than feed it. He acknowledged that personal histories are not content, and that the internet does not need an answer to every riddle. He did not deny, he did not confess, and in doing neither, he returned the story to where it began, two people who once stood close enough that everyone saw it, and who now live at distances the public can only guess at. By week's end, the narrative had become something else, a mirror held up to everyone watching. Was it love? Was it friendship made tricky by admiration and timing? Was it a door one of them closed while the other kept a hand on the frame? The only thing certain was the ache in her voice when she spoke about wounds that refused to disappear. That ache felt familiar to anyone who has tried to bury a chapter only to find it unburying itself at the worst possible moment. There was talk that they had tried to reconnect once, quietly, between projects, in the safe anonymity of someone else's city. Maybe they took a walk and remembered everything, right up to the parts that hurt. Maybe they sat across from each other and said nothing at all, letting the past hover like a third person at the table. If reconciliation ever happened, it didn't stick. If it didn't, the rumor existed because people needed it to. The tabloids called it the story that refuses to finish itself, looping and looping until someone finally cuts the film. Still, when the cameras went live again a week later, Elçin appeared composed, softer at the edges but standing up straight. She thanked the team for their patience. She thanked the viewers for their kindness. She didn't rehash anything, but she didn't pretend it hadn't happened either. Sometimes, she said, what we can't say finds its way out anyway. Then she moved on to her next project, because careers don't pause for heartbreak, and because pretending to be someone else for a while can be the most honest form of escape. And the internet did what it always does. It archived the moment. It rewrote it. It set it to music and montaged it into fan edits. It turned private memories into public property and then asked for more. Through it all, two names stayed tethered, drawn together by a story that might never be told in full but still manages to be felt. Not because anyone promised answers, but because sometimes the questions are the only real thing we have. We'll close with this: in a world that never stops watching, the truest acts are often the ones done without an audience. For now, that's where this chapter rests, in the in-between, in the glances that still haunt reruns, in the scenes from Karalik Ask that make strangers believe in something bigger than fiction, and in the quiet decisions made off camera, where the heart chooses its next line. If you liked this video, remember to subscribe and share. This is Turkish Spotlight Secrets, and we'll be here the next time the spotlight flickers.